Hello, everybody. I'm back again. This is Mr. Moore. Today, I wanted to come on very briefly and go through an activity that we did in class covering TEKS 8.4c. Now, as you see here on the screen, TEKS 8.4c talks about where we will use data from a table or graph to determine the rate of change or slope in y-intercept in mathematical and real-world terms. Now, the items that we're going to be focusing on today are simply mathematical problems, specifically coming from a graph where we would match a graph's information to a table, which we would then go ahead and match to the slope and the y-intercept. All four of those items are going to be key, and we need to understand how they are related. So what I'm going to do is have us first look at some graphs, and then we're going to go on to another page where we're going to try to use the information that we have identified in the graph to assist us. So let's go ahead and go on to these. First things first, everybody. We're going to look at the graph on the left, specifically to match up with some information that's going to come up. But I'm going to use the one on the right to have us look at how we could actually construct a graphical representation of slope, specifically using rise over run. And so I want to go ahead and show everybody that now. So one thing that we need to know, everybody, is that in order to figure out the slope from a graph, we only need 2 points. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to move between those 2 points. And I'm going to use the specific items that are specified here with the red dots as points that I would use in order to do that. Now, the first thing I'd like to tell my students to do is that they need to make sure that we have identified the points that are actually on the graph. And so another thing that we want to be cognizant of or aware of is that along the x-axis here at the bottom, okay, and I think we know where the x-axis is. The x-axis does go horizontal. It is a side-to-side representation axis, and so we know that the up and down representation of an axis is called the y. Okay, so that's just a quick reminder. Although we are studying in 8th grade TEKS, we want to make sure that we have a clear handle on which one is the x, which one is our y. So first of all, we're going to look at this point right here at the top where I've just placed that black dot. When I circle that, okay, I want to identify that point. I'm first going to start at my x, of course, look at where my y is, and I'm going to label that point as, let me go back. Okay, so I'm going to label that point as 1, 6. Okay, I apologize if my finger handwriting is a little messy. We're going to then label this second one as, let's see, we have 2, 4 here. Again, taking my 2 for my x coordinate and using that in conjunction with my y coordinate, which is 4. Remember, we're coming together starting at the bottom here, coming from the side. Where they meet or intersect is going to be the point. And then the last one that we have here is going to be 3, 2. Okay, so I hope that you can understand my writing there. So we want to make sure that we've identified those 2 points. And this is just good practice, especially when we go on to other things, specifically when we look at our transformations, which will be coming up shortly, that we have a clear handle on how to identify those points. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase that. First of all, I'm going to clear all of my annotations. I'm going to switch over to highlighter function. And so the goal is for me to get from point to point, okay? And that's going to help me determine my slope. I'm going to start off by determining my rise. I want to get from this point to this point, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to erase that. So I'm going to get from that point to that point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down from this point. I'm using the highlighter tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop at the side-to-side or Y grid there, that horizontal grid. And then I'm going to move over to my point, okay, using that horizontal grid. Now, what I need to be concerned with over here, everybody, is I need to be concerned with the fact that I have identified the increments. So I have 6 and 2 here. So my dot starts at 6 and it goes down to 2 for my for my rise. Okay, remember that the rise goes up and down. And so when I look at my increments, I'm looking at the total distance between those. We see 6 and 2. So what is the absolute value of the distance that we moved? And the absolute value of that distance is going to be 4. Now, because I moved down to try to get to the other point, that is going to be a -4 rise. Okay, when you go down, it is negative. When you go up, it would be positive. So we have to go down to get to the other point. Now let's look at the one at the bottom here, everybody. The one at the bottom is going to be our run, and our run goes from 1 to 3. The increments are different along that particular portion of the triangle that I'm creating. So because I'm going right and not left, it's going to be a positive run of 2 because I went from 1 to 2. So we'll get 1, 2. So I have a positive run of 2. When I figure out my rise over my run, I'm going to plug in these points. My rise was a -4. My run was a +2. So when I simplify that, a negative divided by a positive is going to be a -2 as my rise over my run, also known as your slope. That's the graphical way to do that. Now I want to go ahead and shift my focus over here. Now that I know the procedural part, I'm going to shift my focus to the graph on the left, okay? So now, again, the goal is for us to get from point to point. I can use any of those points. I purposely used the graph on the right because it's a little bit bigger, there's a little bit more detail, but I'm going to use the one on the left now that we have sort of a basic idea. I'm going to continue to use green for my rise and purple for my run. So again, I'm going to choose to use this point right here, this point right there. Okay, so how I get to those using my rise over run is going to be my next step. So I want to go ahead and erase that. Okay, I'm going to shift back to my highlighter. Again, when I go from the point that I'm about to start from, down the horizontal, and I'm going to make that a little bit smaller for us to be able to see. Okay, so I'm going to go back. And now, when I go down, I apologize, everybody. I made that a little bit too small. Okay, so I'm going to try that. Okay, see if we have one right in the middle. Okay, and so now I'm going to go down. That is perfect. Now I'm going to go down and I'm going to stop at my horizontal grid where this particular point is. Okay, I want to stop there. Now, that is going from 7 all the way down to a -1. What is the absolute value of my distance? The absolute value of my distance is going to be from a +7 passing the x-axis going down another 1. So because, again, I'm going down in my rise, that is going to be a rise of -8. And I'll label that as my rise, okay? So it's skipping, counting down from 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3, 2, 1, down to -1. So it's a rise of -8. One warning, everybody, do not count the lines. You're counting the number of units between those. And so when I skip count down, when I skip count down, it's like this, everybody. When I skip count down, and I will erase that. So when I skip count down, it's going to be a distance of 8. Because I'm going down on my rise, it's going to be a -8, okay? Now, switching over to purple like I had before to determine my, my run. So I'm going to go over from the -1 over to where this point stops. The total distance going from -1 to +3. Think of that sort of like a number line. Okay, when I skip count, that is a total of 4 spaces. When I move to the right with my run, that's going to be a +4. +4. Okay, so now I've gone down a -8, and I have gone over a +4. So again, I'm going to label that as my run. And then what I'll do is I'll come down here and I will go ahead and write formally that M, also known as your slope, will equal rise over run. I'm going to fill in what I've just noted, that my rise was a -8. My run was a +4. Remember that when I divide or put something into a fraction, that is simply shorthand for division. And dividing a negative by a positive is going to give me a -2 as my slope. So my slope is now -2. One of the things that I'm now going to be identifying on this next page is my y-intercept, okay? I want to match up all of these things. So my y-intercept, everybody, is going to be what? Where's my y-intercept? Well, as we know, the y-intercept is going to be where the line hits the y-axis. And in this case, it's going to hit the y-axis. Let's see, it's going to hit the y-axis right here where I drew that arrow. And that point happens to be 0, 5 because it is on the y-axis. It has no x value, but it does have a y value of 5. So that point is 0, 5. Let me go ahead and identify those other points also because I'm going to have to match those up with my graph, or with the table, excuse me, in just a moment. So this point right here that I'm identifying, that point with my sort of sad little arrow, I will make that a little less sad. I'm going to try to draw that one more time. Excuse technical difficulties. So this point right here is going to be 2, 1. The next point it looks to be is if I go up past the y-axis, this point right here is going to be a -1, 7. Okay, I just covered that up with my arrow, but that was a -1, 7. And then lastly, this point is 1, 3. So my goal at this point, everybody, is to go ahead and identify the points so that when I go to match up the points in my table, and if we remember, everybody, the table is just going to be a representation of the points on our graph. So let's go ahead and look at that quickly. I don't want to keep you guys too long. So again, I'm looking for a table here that matches those points. So let's go back. I have -1, -1, 7. Is there one that has -1, 7? I'm looking at one. Let's see. I see right here that in the table that is right there, I have one of my points. Let's see if it has another. 0, 5. I see that one. Let's see. Do I see 3, -1? See, 3, -1 is here at the bottom. Yes, I see that. So this is going to be the table that matches up. Remember that in a table, those are just ordered pairs. I know that I just constructed the rise over run graphically. I know that my slope was a -2, so I choose this as a -2. Then I'll go back and I said that my y-intercept, which was here, everybody, okay, is 0, 5. So now, when you have your y-intercept, the value of that number, again, above the y-axis is going to be a 5. So let's go down the list. Nope, that can't be it because that's not a 5. Nope, it wasn't at 8. Neither was it at 2, but it was at 5. So what I've done, everybody, is I have noted the fact that, again, I was graphically able to find my slope. It was a -2. I recognized the fact that my table had values that matched up with those points in my graph. I then chose the slope that went with it, and then the y-intercept is 5. Now, this information and this skill will become very handy when we move on to actually writing equations for the line, that line. Okay, so that skill is going to be super important in how we build that equation. We are done with yet another tutorial, everybody. I hope that this has been helpful for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign off now. If you do have any questions or concerns, please make sure that you get me that information in class, come to a tutorial session, and I will be happy to help. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great evening and a great day.